Today, I'm going to rank every single one of Ippo's fights in the first season of Hajime no Ippo in order. Let's get right into it because obviously there is quite a few. While it is technically more of a spar than a fight, the first bout between Ippo and Miyata is absolutely iconic and was essential for the story. Not only that, but it told us a lot about both of these characters. I think for many people, this was the point in the show that you decided you were going to keep watching. Therefore, it would be wrong to not rate this fight. Because there's so many good fights in the series, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. The second spar between Ippo and Miyata was not really a spar, to be completely honest. This was definitely a fight. The reason I like this fight a lot is because not only was Ippo going for vengeance or get back, but we got to see how much he has grown as a character in 3 months. That, combined with the fact that this is very early in the show and Ippo has not won a single fight to this point, left me, and I'm sure yourself, guessing who is going to win this battle. This is going to be extremely debatable, but I also think that this random spar in the show happens to have some of the best animation throughout the entire first season. Not only does the cell shading definitely shine here, but the colors are on point, and this scene right here looked absolutely crazy. Obviously, Hajime no Ippo has some better fights, but I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I really liked it. Next up is this random scrub that Ippo had to fight on his way to become a professional boxer. This fight was obviously not meant to blow you away, it was just to show how much stronger Ippo is than an average boxer, and I think they did a good job of doing that. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10 because it does end in like 4 seconds. Next is kind of the first real fight of the series, Ippo versus Yusuke Oda. Now, watching this fight back, I honestly thought it was extremely underwhelming, but I had to think back to when I watched it for the first time. My thought going into this anime, and more particularly going into this fight, is that they would want Ippo to stay undefeated for as long as they possibly can. But when I saw Ippo get cut on the eye, I kind of thought they were going to stop the fight because of it and give Ippo his first loss based off of something that he could not control, thus showing that he is a more skilled boxer than his opponent. However, he just got unlucky. But that's not what they did, obviously. Ippo did end up winning this fight, but it was extremely close, and I found it to be extremely entertaining when I watched it the first time. Therefore, even though it is very underwhelming compared to a lot of the other fights in this series, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. The next fight is one of the weaker in the series in my opinion. It is Ippo's fight versus Yoshio Fujiwara. If you don't remember this fight, I don't blame you. This is the guy who tried cheating by headbutting Ippo. This fight is not that good. I think the point of it was to show us that people are trying to cheat in boxing. However, I enjoyed it pretty neutrally. I mean, I didn't want to skip by it or anything. I think for something to be a 4, I have to genuinely not want to watch it. Therefore, I'm going to also give this fight a 5. Next up is Ippo versus Jason Ozma. If you weren't already hooked on Hajime no Ippo by the time you made it to this episode, then you definitely became hooked once you started watching this fight. This is the first of many times throughout the series where they actually got me to care about a side character. And had Jason won this fight, I honestly wouldn't be too upset about it. It was an extremely entertaining fight. Jason was a respectful competitor to the end, and this is the point in Hajime no Ippo where I really started to get into the fights because they definitely stepped it up in this fight. Watching the fights I mentioned earlier in this video back, you will see a common theme, and that is Ippo is very inexperienced, thus making the fights not as entertaining. However, this is the point where Ippo definitely starts to step it up, so I'm going to give this fight an 8.2 out of 10. I enjoyed it slightly more than the second spar between Miyata and Ippo, and maybe I'm really biased when it comes to that spar, but I liked it quite a bit. Next up is Kobashi. This fight made me so mad. I can't stand Kobashi. Everyone watching this video, you should hold a grudge against Kobashi, man, because he is so lame. Now, once again, I do understand the point of this fight is to show us that people have very diverse boxing styles, and that is why they kind of went in rotation and showed us different kinds of styles throughout this tournament. As I said earlier, though, it can only be below a 5 if I genuinely wanted to skip it. And did I want to skip this fight? No, I wanted to see Kobashi lose, which is why I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I kind of enjoyed it. Next up is Ippo versus Hayami. I didn't think this fight was bad, but I also didn't think it was really anything spectacular. Once again, it was another character that I wanted to see lose, but the outcome of this fight was pretty obvious from the beginning, and there wasn't anything that impressed me too much to the point where I can give it an 8 or 9. I also didn't really like that Ippo got up in this fight because he wanted to fight against Miyata. I mean, you literally beat Miyata after 3 months of training. I don't know why you're so driven to fight him. So yeah, everything about this fight is just kind of meh to me, but once again, I didn't want to skip it, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Since you've made it this far in the video, let's play a game. Guess how many subscribers I have, and if you guess more than what I actually have, drop a subscription so you can see more content like this and so you can help me hit that number. I'm currently at 1,350. Next up is Ippo versus Mashiba. This is definitely one of my favorite fights in the entire series. I like the whole dynamic of not only Miata already losing to Mashiba, so the stakes were kind of high to see where Ippo falls in comparison to Miata, but then you also have Ippo trying to deal with the conflict of Kumi being Mashiba's sister and Ippo obviously having a thing for Kumi. Ippo won the fight against Miata having only trained for 3 months. The writers of Hajime no Ippo are obviously trying to make a distinct rivalry between Ippo and Miata. That being said, if Miata lost to Ippo and then lost to Mashiba and then Ippo went and beat Mashiba, it would kind of ruin the rivalry between those two. Which is why this fight definitely had me on the edge of my seat. I had no idea who was going to win it, and regardless of who won it, the story was going to change drastically and become a lot more interesting. Mashiba's fighting style was also very interesting to watch, as he was using Thomas Hearn's Hitman stance as well as the flicker jabs and other common attributes. It was definitely interesting trying to watch an inboxer like Ippo try to deal with someone using the ridiculous range as well as flicker jabs. Furthermore, at this point in the story, Mashiba kinda seemed untouchable. He had this weird aura to him that made it seem like he was a far more experienced boxer than everyone shown thus far. Couple that with, once again, the fact that he beat Miata and he seemed like an unbeatable opponent for Ippo. That is also why I really like the scene where Ippo started to doubt himself in this fight, thinking that it was unwinnable. It makes perfect sense and it fit into the story great, and seeing Ippo not only trying to defeat Mashiba but overcome that mindset made this a very entertaining fight. And also the way that Ippo won this fight was also very interesting. Is this the first perfect fight of the series? I don't think so. There's a few fights I like a little bit more than this one, but I did enjoy it a lot. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Next up is Ippo versus Sendo. I don't want to say this is my favorite fight in the series, but it's definitely up there. I like everything about this fight. I like the way that Sendo is introduced. It's made clear from the beginning that this guy is not your typical boxer. He doesn't just want to be handed an opponent and beat them and plump up his record. He wants to be the best, and that is why he pursued fighting Ippo. Granted, it was a little weak in my opinion that Sendo was really pursuing this fight against Ippo, despite Ippo exclaiming that his fist was not going to be at 100%, kind of disabling him. However, it was not Sendo's intention to fight a weakened Ippo. He just saw how strong Ippo was and he wanted to fight him. Now, to be completely honest with you, despite me really liking the first half of this fight, I think you can completely disregard it and look at the second half. Alright, go ahead and call me a cornball in the comments for this, I do not care. When the entire crowd was chanting, "Rocky! Rocky!" and Sendo kept fighting despite being absolutely battered, only to reveal that he was passed out the entire time, that was some of the most ridiculous cinema I have ever seen in an anime, probably one of my favorite anime episodes ever, and easily one of my favorite fights in all of Hajime no Ippo, which is why I'm going to give this fight a 10 out of 10. I think this is a perfect fight and I liked it a lot. Next up, we have Ippo's fight versus Okita. Okita is easily one of my least favorite characters in this show. I don't know what it is with every shonen anime, but there's always a certified glazer. Okay, look, I understand that this is a shonen anime and the main character is expected to win. However, when there is just a sliver of a chance that the main character is going to lose, I'm obviously going to be a lot more engaged in the fight because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. This is another one of those fights where it's pretty obvious from the beginning that Ippo is going to win. However, I thought it was a decent fight. Once again, I did not want to skip it. I didn't think it was too crazy. I did like the corkscrew punches. I am going to give this a 6 out of 10. Next up is Ippo versus Saeki. This is a pretty interesting fight, and the events that unfolded before this set up this fight pretty well. If you don't remember what I'm referring to, this is the fight that takes place after Ippo's mother is hospitalized, and eventually she comes back thanks to the help of Umezawa. Ippo promises them that he is not going to lose his next fight, so there's a little bit of pressure behind this match. However, Saeki is not a pushover, and this definitely wasn't an easy fight for Ippo. He had to get creative, also thanks to the fact that his eye was wounded during the fight. This is a fight that Ippo got very tactical in. He definitely used his mind a lot more than usual. I think the point of this fight is to show us how much Ippo has actually developed as a boxer, as he was able to win this fight thanks to the fact that he recognized Saeki's rhythm. Is it my favorite fight in the series? Not exactly, but did I like it? Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Next up is Ippo versus Vorg. If you're subscribed to the channel, you know that my last video was based off of Vorg, and I talked about Season 1, Episode 50 quite a lot in that video, stating that I think it is the best episode in all of Hajime no Ippo. If you want me to get really detailed about why I think this fight is so great, you can go watch that video, but long story short, I think that Vorg's development as a character throughout this fight was absolutely beautiful, and I know a lot of people actually commented on my last video saying they cried at this fight, and you are completely just in doing so. Watching Vorg discover his passion for boxing and watching the final scene after the fight was almost more entertaining than the fight itself. This was beautiful writing, and I think that this is a masterpiece. Absolutely 10 out of 10 fight. Next up is Ippo versus Date. Ippo sparred Date earlier in the series, and it was shown that he is completely outclassed when it comes to skill. So this fight was definitely entertaining, as we could see how far Ippo has come since that spar. Admittedly, as much as I like Hajime no Ippo, the fight formula started to get repetitive at this point. It seemed as if Ippo would start off winning the fight, Ippo would then start losing the fight, get up thanks to his willpower, and win the fight. As I'm sure everyone watching this knows, this fight completely broke that formula and blew mine, and I'm sure your mind as well. The fight was absolutely amazing. The fact that Date was tilting his head to absorb punches was very interesting, and by the way, I'm still wondering to this day if that would work in real life, so if anyone knows, leave it in the comments, because I'm pretty sure you would just get your neck broken, but I'm not sure. I'm not a boxer. However, while I did think the fight was great, I think what really made this a masterpiece in my eyes is the fact that Ippo lost. I thought I valued Ippo's record as a viewer of the show, but in reality, Ippo having an undefeated record really made the show a lot less interesting, because it's pretty much guaranteed that he is going to win every fight he is a part of. So not only seeing Ippo lose, but seeing Ippo having to deal with the loss made the show a lot more entertaining, and in my opinion cemented this fight as a 10 out of 10. Next up is Ippo versus Ponkai. This is a very forgettable fight in terms of how much screen time his opponent got, but upon rewatching this fight for this video, I realized I like this fight a lot more than I remember. First of all, you have the scene before Ippo actually enters the ring, where it shows the crowd is still supporting him despite the fact that he lost to Date. That's an absolutely beautiful scene, and I feel like it sets up the fight perfectly, as well as puts just the right amount of pressure on Ippo. But obviously the highlight of this fight is when Ippo says to Kamigawa, "Don't worry coach, I'm about to knock him down." And then of course it speaks for itself. This is the first time in the show we get to see the Dempsey roll. Once again, call me a cornball, I don't care. The scene where Ippo does the Dempsey roll for the first time gives me chills. Despite this being a short fight with really no shown backstory of the character that Ippo is fighting against, the fact that Ippo is finally breaking out of his shell, not just doing techniques that the coach teaches him, as well as the fact that he got a quick knockout, makes this one of my favorite fights in the series, and I'm gonna say it, 10 out of 10. I love this fight. I understand if you disagree with me on that, but I implore you to rewatch this fight if you have not seen it in a while, because I think it'll prove to be a little bit better than you remember. Finally, we have the Ippo versus Sendo rematch. Before rewatching this fight, I probably would have rated it about a 7.5, and upon rewatching it, honestly, I don't think it's that good. I feel like it went on for way too long, being about an hour long, and most of that time is just Sendo battering Ippo. However, the end of this fight where Ippo once again questions what it means to be strong is one of the best scenes in the anime and a great way to close out Season 1. Therefore, because of the way the fight ends, I'm gonna give it a 7.5 still. However, you remove that ending scene, and this is really not the best fight in the series, and it is certainly not as good as Sendo versus Ippo the first time around, in my opinion. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and make sure to subscribe for more Hajime no Ippo and anime content. And if you want, click the video on your screen. It's pretty good. Have a good one.